Welcome to Day 3 of the 2022 Adobe DITAWORLD Conference. I'm Rob Hanna, and I'm very pleased to be here as a diamond sponsor to this premier industry event. I'm honored to share the stage at this event with some of the best talent in our industry, showcasing some of the best technology. And in the coming weeks, I'll have some exciting news to share with you that I think will be a game changer in the Adobe AEM Guides community. But in the meantime, while I may be new to the Adobe stage, I'm not new to Adobe products. Like most of you, I've built much of my success in the field with Adobe products such as FrameMaker and RoboHelp. In fact, I've been a technical communicator for more than 30 years, and over that time, I've explored my own curiosity into the nuts and bolts of technical writing. For nearly 20 years, I've been helping clients around the globe make the transition to structured writing with DITA-XML. And during that time, frankly, I've been troubled by the slow rates of adoption and lack of ROI companies have seen when moving to DITA. And I was convinced that there had to be a better way. So in 2013, I launched my company, Precision Content in Toronto, Canada, to help organizations unlock the potential of DITA, starting with the content itself. So we started with a focus on changing our mindsets around content and how to author it. We created our own research-based precision content writing methods around which we built our teams of information architects, software developers, writers, and trainers, all centered on this methodology and an evolving set of best practices. And that's what brings me here to you all today, to talk about an important concept in structured authoring and delivery called microcontent. And so I want to take you through the problem that we intend to solve before diving into microcontent, talking about the four main characteristics of function, focus, structure, and context, and then talk about some of the application of microcontent for omnichannel delivery before wrapping up. On day one of this conference, Sarah O'Keefe gave a brilliant keynote on how content as a service promises to fundamentally change how we publish content to meet increasingly complex operational needs of the clients we serve. Today, I want to step back a bit and talk about the why and the how we will reach this bold new vision. Many of the large, well-established organizations we all serve are facing competition from much smaller, faster, exponential organizations that are completely disrupting their industry sectors. The expected lifespan of a Fortune 100 company today is considerably shorter today than it was only 2 decades ago. These upstarts have found ways to leverage vast amounts of external intelligence to drive information enablement. What if we instead looked inwards? If only these established brands could leverage the best competitive advantage that they have, their own experience and wealth of tacit knowledge, they could rise to disrupt their own industry before the competition does. If only they could tap into their own institutional knowledge. If they could find a way to information enable their own workforce to find new opportunities and explore new directions. So, of course, how will artificial intelligence contribute to this? AI is only now beginning to touch our industry in ways that were hard to even imagine a mere decade ago. We are seeing advances in machine learning for machine translation, natural language processing, and even natural language generation. Yes, machines are now writing stock reports, sports stories, children's books, and some very questionable Christmas carols. But if we want to see AI become a force in our industry, we'll need to meet it halfway. We need to learn how to write for both humans and machines. And this will unlock what we're trying to achieve through omnichannel and creating meaningful customer experiences. Now, there are many great articles published and presentations given on the importance of the customer experience through omnichannel delivery and support. The main thrust of these talks focus on the need to establish trust with our audiences through reliable, consistent, and pervasive messaging and communication across all user modalities. But what if, in addition to fostering exceptional customer experiences, we turned our efforts to giving our own workforce the best information available to delight our customers, whether it is in a customer-facing role or directed to building better products and services and exceptional employee experiences? So, to really fully appreciate the exceptional rate of change we're facing in the content and technology space, I want to take a step back to where it all began. About 100,000 years ago, we started talking, and voice communication became how we communicated with each other on a one-to-one basis. It wasn't for 60,000 years that we started actually writing things down, and thus the birth of the content industry. And through this 1.0 phase of content, we see that the technology has evolved, becoming much more durable, portable, reusable, affordable, and pervasive as we move through the centuries. Up until the early 1400s, with the invention of the Gutenberg press, which of course changed society in so many different and meaningful ways, where we democratized information and made information available to the masses. And then, of course, in more recent memory, the age of digital, the invention of the web, social media, mobile, where now anybody can publish and everybody does. And we're right on the precipice of the next major shift and the next major step in content and communication as a medium. This is voice. All right, this is where we talk to machines and machines talk to us. And machines can take what we tell them and they can package it up and they can maintain that information and share that information anywhere and any time. This is a major step. And when we think about science fiction and we think about the idea of neural interfaces into information, this really is much closer than we think. In fact, Elon Musk has already come out with technology in the form of Neuralink. And what does this mean for our society and how it will evolve our society, where we're able to communicate in a whole new level? So with that, how do we start to talk with machines? How do we create content that we can leverage, not just to keep the lights on with our day-to-day producing regular print, PDF, online help, web pages, and the like, but how can we leverage that content to serve additional channels, additional audiences, including machines? And this is microcontent. And while microcontent was first coined back in the 90s by Jacob Nelson, we've evolved it a little bit. So taking it out of or evolving it beyond the marketing sphere and web content to structured content or intelligent microcontent. Now, it's of course important to note that it's not microcontent just because it's small. In fact, we use 4 primary characteristics to help define microcontent. First, focus. Limiting microcontent to be about a single answer to a question, about one thing. Function. Classifying information to identify intended user response. Structure. Using predictable patterns and language. And context. To make microcontent easily related to other content. So let's break these down just a little bit. So focus. Microcontent must be about only one thing. As technical writers, we like to cram a lot of information into tiny spaces. We like to be very economical about how much paper we use to produce information, and to great effect. But what does it mean for the ease of human consumption, and particularly machine consumption, when we pack information so tightly? Looking at how we organize information and how we create architectures for information needs to be able to take this into account. So let's look at a typical topic. All right, so topics are not microcontent, not exactly. So let's look at this and look at a task topic. So, one of the more complex semantic constructs in the data world. So of course we start with our primary block or short description describing the purpose of the task most typically. And then we have supporting blocks to help the reader actually perform that task. Now when we look at this, each of these blocks within the body have a heading, have their own semantic substructures, their own way of conveying information. In fact, they have their own information types. All right, within this task topic, only one of those blocks is an actual task, and that's the steps block that tells the person how to actually perform the task. Everything else is a different type of information, all wrapped in a task topic. This is an important concept, all right? So I want to talk about really differentiating the task, or the topic, I should say, and the block. So let's do a little bit of a comparison. So topics are really a construct for authoring and for creating information, where blocks are more a construct for consuming that information. Right? Topics are really only meaningful to the author, and they represent a unit of work, whereas blocks are a medium for interchange, for sharing. Topics, all content is authored, reviewed, and approved as a topic, whereas all content exists inside blocks contained within topics. Blocks represent individual files that are versioned, uniquely identified, whereas blocks are virtual, as part of a topic or referenced by a topic. Topics consist of one or more blocks, and blocks exist in one or more topics. Topics can be reduced to a block, and blocks can be expanded to a topic. And finally, topics are suitable for traditional publishing channels, such as print and online as pages. But they don't work quite as well when we're talking about conversational user interfaces, such as chatbots and automated assistants, right? Where blocks are much more appropriate. So that's focus. Now function. Information theory says that information is what information does. All information has some function based on how we work with that, how we interpret that information. Information is purely a human construct. And so we need to be able to identify the intended reader response for this information. We're going to shape this information such that it will meet the needs of the user based on what they want to do with it. So we need to have a means to effectively categorize this. And when we talk about data and we talk about information typing and concept, task, and reference, really we're looking at a model for reader intent, what we want the user to do with that information. So let's look at the information types that we use here at Precision Content to categorize information. Of course, we have reference, task, and concept. But we assign very specific meaning to each of these different types of information. So reference describes things the reader needs to know, whereas task instructs the reader how to do things. And concepts are used to explain things that the reader needs to comprehend. All right, so very, very specific cases for this. And we introduced two more information types. And these really come from information mapping, just like concept, task, and reference do. And these are process and principle. Where process is used to demonstrate things the reader needs to understand, when they need to understand how things work. And principle is used to advise the reader about what they need to do or not do and when. Next, we want to look at structure. All right, we must use predictable patterns and language in order to make microcontent work. And Tony Self, in his book, the Did a Style Guide, took a really good run at defining structured authoring, and I think this is a very useful definition for us. But in fact, it's not the first time, obviously, structured authoring has been mentioned. In fact, it's been defined quite some time earlier. In fact, did you know that concepts in structured authoring predate DITA? Sure, that makes sense. They predate XML. Okay. They predate markup languages. Curious. In fact, they even predate desktop publishing. So structured authoring isn't about the tools. Structured authoring is not about XML or DITA. In fact, we go back as far as 1969, 30 years before DITA came on the scene, where Robert Horn first published his paper on information mapping, introducing concepts around structured writing, blocks and maps, and information typing. So the very first structured writing, if you will, was done on a typewriter. And you go out to Google Scholar and you look this up, 1969, Robert Horn, you can find his paper that he published for the US military on information mapping. Structured writing on a typewriter, who'd have thunk? So this is an important concept that I want to really get across here, is that structured authoring is more than just the XML. It's more than the tools. It's the writing. Right? We have to do both. The tools are very, very important to help guide authors in how to effectively structure content and do it in a consistent way so that we can work collaboratively as a team to create large amounts of structured information and be able to reuse that information across information sets. So I'm going to walk you through one of my favorite examples. And this, in fact, was our very, very first customer back in 2013. And it was the American Joint Committee on Cancer, the AJCC, which is part of the American College of Surgeons. They brought us in to help them transform their cancer staging manual. What they really trying to do was, they were looking to be able to self-publish, get out of Word, create a better workflow. But what they were really interested in was being able to share or reuse this information in other information systems, such as electronic health records and cancer staging calculators. And so they had attempted to, sort of ship this information overseas and have people wrap XML tags around it to see if we couldn't just make this work. And they were not successful, and they did not know why. So they came to me. So, in fact, they gave me this snippet of content. I had explained to them what our methodology was and how it worked, and offered to demonstrate. So they sent me this exact snippet of text, and I'm not a medical writer. I don't know the first thing about cancer or oncology or the like, but using methods to go in and analyze this information, we're able to see, what's really wrong with it. But at first blush, being a DITA smarty, I can look at this and say, this is a rather simple DITA structure, right? Probably a definition list. We've got a couple of footnotes in there, just some paragraph text, nothing too complicated. If I want to reproduce this structure exactly as is, it's a simple path to putting XML around that, but it's not structured. That's the problem. So we go in, we pull this apart, we identify ambiguous or redundant text we find big holes in the information where there is information missing that is necessary for human comprehension. And this content had been out there for decades, just like this. And so anyway, we took this, we worked with their subject matter experts, and we filled in some of the holes. And this is what we came up with. New way to sort of structure the cancer staging table, where we saw with this exact same segment of content, we almost cut the number of words in half, and we added words here. We added information that was missing and still saw a significant reduction in the word count, while also improving the readability score on this. So making this information easier for humans to comprehend, making this information discrete and disentangling that information so that it can be more easily interpreted. So at the same time, we've made this information easier for machines as well. In fact, we created a specialization around this XML so that we could rework this information to have it display in that table, but also make it intelligible for machines, making content ready for both human and machine consumption. The last of the four principles or characteristics is context. And this is really important for us to understand, because while we talk about microcontent, we talk about chatbots, and a lot of this sort of microcontent that we're authoring is often written in isolation, as opposed to part of a greater whole. So what context does is context helps us to understand how this information relates to other information. How does it fit as a part of a whole? And of course, doing the writing that we do, we create lots of documents, lots of information products. And as we do, we accumulate a lot of metadata, relational metadata, administrative metadata, a lot of metadata as we create this content at the topic level, at the map level, at the publication level, in the CCMS, gathering information as this information is produced. And if only we can burst this information into blocks, burst it all, burst every single piece of information in this document and wrap that particular metadata around each of these blocks so that we can reconstruct this information and we can break it down and we can then relate it to other types of information and combine it in new and interesting ways. Then we have real microcontent, where when we take that content and then we include it with that metadata, and we can wrap it up into a package that we can use to serve content as a service type needs or other means of actually getting this content out there. Remember, content as a service being more of a pull technology than a push technology, right? So when consumers want to consume that information, they can use SOAP calls and open APIs to actually target information in content as a service applications and headless CMSs and such, so that they can retrieve the information that they need, but they may need to be able to put it back into context with the larger whole. And that's what this is for. And an interesting emerging technology out of Germany, out of TCOM, is the IIRDS standard, or Intelligent Information Request and Delivery Standard. And it does just this. It's an archive format that contains a content payload that can be in any number of different forms. But the metadata is in a very prescriptive form. All right, so standardizing the metadata rather than standardizing the content, and creating these small chunks of information that then can serve the needs of things like the Internet of Things and Industry 4.0. Now, we're seeing microcontent show up in many places, including Adobe products. So, of course, in RoboHelp has its own microcontent features. where you can create intent and response or question answer type pairs in RoboHelp. Very, very, very useful, very, very helpful. And of course, in AEM guides, we have the snippet feature, which allows us to create these reusable micro-content blocks for authoring. And I think we still have ways to go, and to really turn this into an effective practice. And I'm really excited to be getting started in here. Now, one of the tools that we've been using for some time is a tool called Witty Parrot, and we've developed a data bridge into Witty Parrot. And what you're seeing here is our actual writing guide has been burst into wits or containers, blocks of micro content. The content has been regularized to HTML, and all the metadata has been extracted and can be managed and be used for search and assembly and filtering of that content, where we can then serve it out to the enterprise using Microsoft plugins available for Word and Oxygen to make this this content repository accessible to anybody in the organization, not just structured author writers or those who are working with the CCMS, but to anybody in the organization. In fact, we can even take the same content and repurpose it in Teams as a chatbot. So, there's a lot of different technologies out there. It's just looking at how we use it and how we leverage it. So, are we ready for what's next? I'm going to suggest that we're really already on a path here as we've transitioned from book-based authoring to topic-based authoring. We're on a path. We just need to continue this journey. And it won't be easy, right? It will take time. It will take effort. It will take significant rewrite of a lot of content to get it ready. But we have a path. We have a way. So micro-content really is just the next step in the journey of our evolution. So visit our website. You can go out to pcast.info/DITAWORLD, where you can subscribe to our newsletter. You can download some free web papers, including our micro-content white paper that we've just produced, which is a case study with a client we've been working with for just about 4 years now. Where we've done some pretty remarkable things with our micro-content strategy there. And of course, you can visit us for more information on the web at precisioncontent.com. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And that's it for me today. Thank you.